Some betrayals don't whisper. They explode. Not in private, not in silence, but in front of everyone, when it's too late to look away. Welcome back to Mr. Charles' Stories, where every twist carries truth and every truth carries weight. Today's story isn't just about heartbreak. It's about betrayal hidden behind wedding vows, the courage of a sister, and the unexpected way justice came, dressed in a tux with a microphone in hand. Let's begin. The morning of Leo's wedding started with laughter and sunlight. The estate buzzed with energy, florists adjusting centerpieces, music playing softly, and waiters circling with trays of champagne. Arya had been up since dawn, hair in loose waves, eyes slightly tired but heart full. She wasn't the bride, but she moved through the hall like a quiet anchor, calm, steady, unnoticed by many but needed by all. That was Arya, always dependable, always present, the kind of woman people leaned on without even realizing it. She stood in the guest room next to her brother's fiancé, pinning the final piece of lace onto the long, flowing veil. "You're perfect," Arya whispered, smiling softly. Tessa looked at her through the mirror. She was glowing. Her gown shimmered in the morning light. Her hands were slightly shaky, but her smile was almost real. "You think so?" she asked. "I know so," Arya replied. It had taken months of planning to reach this day. Arya had helped Tessa with nearly every detail, booking the caterers, finalizing the playlist, even covering shifts at the hospital when Tessa needed to run last-minute errands. It didn't matter that Arya was exhausted or juggling double shifts. Leo was her only brother, and if he was happy, that was enough. She trusted Tessa. She believed in her. Until that moment, when Tessa suddenly reached out, resting a hand on Arya's wrist. "Arya." "Thank you," she said softly. "You've been so kind to me. I don't deserve it." The words landed strangely. Kindness should never need defending. And yet, Tessa's eyes held something Arya hadn't seen before. Guilt. Arya smiled faintly. "You're marrying my brother." "Of course you do." Tessa nodded quickly and looked away. Moments later, her phone buzzed. She glanced down, screen angled away from Arya, and her smile slipped. Her fingers hovered over the reply before she excused herself, veil lifted over one shoulder. "I'll be back in a second." Arya watched her go, a faint sense of unease settling like dust. Back downstairs, the estate blossomed into celebration. Guests arrived in waves, hugs exchanged, compliments flying. Arya moved through the crowd with quiet grace, answering questions, directing people to their seats. She couldn't find Damon, her husband, anywhere. She'd last seen him earlier when he said he would help the photographer set up near the garden. He was always good at offering help, especially when it gave him room to disappear. She checked her phone. No messages. Worry didn't hit her all at once. It crept in. Small, sharp reminders that something had felt off for a while now. Damon had changed. Not in any dramatic way. No screaming matches. No cruel words. Just small absences that added up. He started working later, talking less. His eyes felt like they were always somewhere else, even when he sat beside her on the couch. She'd asked once if everything was okay. He smiled, then kissed her forehead, and nothing changed. Arya decided to look for him, not because she expected something was wrong, but because that's what she did. She showed up. She searched. She fixed. She slipped away from the noise, walking through the long hallway lined with framed photos from their childhood. Her heels clicked softly on the hardwood floor. The hallway twisted. Toward the guest wing, temporary rooms where some out-of-town guests had stayed the night before. That's when she heard the voices. Faint, one male, one female. She paused outside the half-closed door. Her heart recognized Damon's voice before her mind caught up. He was laughing, a low, intimate laugh she hadn't heard in weeks. Then another voice, softer, familiar. Tessa. Arya's fingers tightened around the bouquet she still held. She pushed the door, just slightly. What she saw stopped time. Tessa stood close to Damon, her veil folded on a nearby chair. Lipstick smudged at the corner of her mouth. Damon's hand rested on her waist, fingers pressed into the silk of her dress like they belonged there. They weren't speaking anymore. They were whispering, foreheads nearly touching, her hand on his chest. Arya didn't step in. She didn't scream. She simply stared. And they didn't even notice. When Damon finally turned his head and spotted her, his face turned white. Tessa pulled back, like she'd been caught stealing. Arya said nothing. Her feet moved backward. Her hands shook, but her face stayed blank. She closed the door quietly behind her. The hallway didn't feel familiar anymore. She walked in a daze, past laughing guests, past the echo of music and memories. Her body moved through the motions, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Outside, Leo laughed with a friend near the altar, tossing back a drink, his eyes full of excitement. Her chest tightened. She wanted to run to him, to shout, to shake him out of this illusion. But instead, she stood still, watching, absorbing, trying to breathe. She couldn't ruin it. Not like that. And yet, the truth sat on her chest like a weight. It would come out. It had to. But not from her. Not yet. By the time the ceremony began, Arya had smoothed her dress and her face into something resembling peace. Guests gathered. Music played. Tessa walked down the aisle, smile frozen. Veil perfect again. Lipstick retouched. Damon took his seat a few rows back. Arya saw him look her way once, but she didn't blink. She sat in the front row like a statue. Only her hands gave her away. Fingers locked tightly together, nails digging into her own palm. Leo stood beneath the arch, beaming. He looked at Tessa like she was everything. And as the officiant began to speak, Arya's world grew quieter. Not peaceful, just numb. Tessa spoke her vows with a trembling voice. Leo's words, on the other hand, were full of life. He spoke about trust, loyalty, forever, words that twisted knives into Arya's heart. Then came the moment of silence. The question, if anyone has reason these two should not be joined, speak now or forever hold your peace. The world paused. Arya's lungs burned, but she said nothing. She looked at Damon again. He wouldn't even meet her eyes. Then Leo cleared his throat and said, "Before we go on, I'd like to say something." Leo's voice cut through the hush like a slow blade. "Before we go on," he repeated, turning to the crowd, "I'd like to say something." The officiant glanced toward the family row, unsure whether to step back or speak. But Leo didn't wait for permission. He turned to Tessa, holding both her hands, his tone calm but unreadable. "I've always believed in honesty," he said, "and I thought this day, this moment, was about starting our lives with the truth." Tessa smiled weakly, trying to keep her composure, but her grip on the bouquet trembled. "I want everyone here to know I love this woman," Leo continued. "Or at least, I thought I did." Tessa blinked. "Leo, what are you—" Leo held up a finger gently. "Let me finish." He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out his phone. "I wasn't planning to do this today. I really wasn't. But someone sent me something last night. I ignored it at first. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to walk down this aisle and say my vows like nothing happened. But when I looked at you this morning, Tessa," he shook his head, "I knew I couldn't pretend." He tapped his screen. Behind them, the projector that had been set up to display childhood photos and wedding memories flickered to life. At first, there was silence. Then, a still image appeared. Tessa, in a car. At night, next to Damon, their faces close, her head tilted toward him. Someone in the crowd gasped. Another photo, a hotel lobby security still, Damon with his hand on her back, Tessa looking up at him, both unaware of the camera overhead. Another, the inside of an elevator, Tessa in his arms, Damon's mouth on hers. Arya's breath caught. Her hands gripped the fabric of her dress. Tessa dropped her bouquet. Damon stood up from his seat, face pale, eyes wide. The crowd erupted in whispers. Leo didn't flinch. He turned to Tessa. "You told me you were staying at your cousin's during that conference. You told me you were working late when I called. I would have never known, but someone did. And they sent me this, with a message. Tessa shook her head. Leo, He stopped her cold. Don't. His voice had lost the warmth it carried minutes ago. I wanted you to tell me yourself. I waited all night for you to come clean. You didn't. He looked toward Damon. You too. You're my sister's husband. You came into our family like a brother, and you thought I wouldn't find out. Damon didn't speak. Arya watched, frozen. Her heart pounded in her ears. Her body stayed still, but inside, her world was breaking all over again. Leo took a step forward and faced the crowd. I won't marry a liar. Not today. Not ever. He looked back at Tessa. You had the chance to be honest. You chose secrets. Tessa tried to reach for him. Please, Leo, let's talk. This isn't what it looks like. But he stepped back. His hands fell to his sides. His jaw clenched. I loved you, he said. And you couldn't even give me honesty. He turned to the officiant. I think we're done here. Silence filled the garden. Then murmurs. Then movement. Guests stood. Some walked away quickly. Others stayed seated, unsure what to do. Arya stood slowly. Her eyes met Leo's across the aisle. He looked at her with an apology, as if he knew she hadn't wanted it this way either. She didn't cry, not in front of them. Tessa stood frozen, makeup cracking under the sun, mascara bleeding from the corners of her eyes. Damon was still staring at the ground. Leo walked off the altar. The wedding was over. That night, the estate was quiet again. No music, no lights, just leftover petals scattered across the lawn and empty chairs gathered under trees. Arya sat alone in her parents' backyard garden, a cardigan over her dress, hair down now, face bare. Her heels were off. Her feet touched the grass, like she needed something real again. She stared at nothing. Then footsteps approached. Leo sat beside her, silent for a moment. Did you know? He asked softly. Arya didn't answer right away. She didn't want to. I found them, she finally whispered. This morning, before the ceremony. Leo closed his eyes briefly, nodding. In the room? Arya nodded back. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know how, she said. I wanted to protect you. I didn't want to crush you on the happiest day of your life. Leo's voice cracked. But it wasn't going to be happy, was it? No, she whispered. It wasn't. He looked out over the yard. You've always protected me. It's instinct, she said. They both laughed, a quiet, dry laugh that carried more sadness than humor. You saved me today, he said, in your silence. And, in your pain. Arya finally let her tears fall. She didn't wipe them. Leo leaned in, rested his head gently on her shoulder. They stayed there as the garden lights flickered on one by one. In the days that followed, Arya packed her things and moved out of the apartment she shared with Damon. No confrontation, no shouting match, just quiet goodbyes to a life she thought would last longer. Damon tried to stop her once. He showed up at her new place. Flowers, a letter, words that sounded too late and too rehearsed. She listened, then closed the door. She went back to work. She smiled at her patients. She bought herself a new journal and filled it with every thought she had buried for the last 3 years. Not because she was bitter, but because she was finally free. Before the wedding, before the lies unraveled, before the veil lifted on betrayal, Arya believed in forever. She had once been the kind of woman who held love like a truth. Not a fantasy, not a gamble, just something simple and sacred that grew between two people who showed up for each other. That's what she thought marriage was. And for a while, it had been. Or so it seemed. 3 years earlier, on a cloudy afternoon in Boston, Arya met Damon. It wasn't some grand moment. She was leaving her shift at the pediatric ward, hair tied in a messy bun, scrubs wrinkled from a 12-hour shift. Damon had just finished giving a lecture at a university conference nearby. An architect known for sustainable design and sharp modern buildings. Their paths crossed when he stepped into the hospital's cafe to grab coffee. He held the door open for her. She smiled. He ordered black coffee. She ordered herbal tea. They sat at nearby tables, alone. Then his phone rang, loudly. He scrambled to silence it, apologizing softly to no one in particular. Arya laughed without meaning to. He looked up. "Rough day?" She nodded. "Mine or yours?" He smiled. "Let's say both." She didn't know what made her stay. Maybe the way his voice dropped when he asked real questions, or how he didn't look at her like someone to impress, but like someone to understand. They talked for 15 minutes, then 45, then nearly 2 hours. Their early days were simple. Lunch breaks that turned into walks. Texts that felt effortless. Damon wasn't flashy. He didn't brag. He listened more than he spoke. And when he did speak, he made you feel like the only person in the room. For a woman used to caring for everyone else, Arya found herself being cared for. In quiet ways. Notes left on her windshield. Her favorite smoothie waiting after late shifts. A playlist he made called for calm hearts like yours. He told her he liked the way she never rushed her words. She told him she liked the way he took off his watch when he sat with her. Like time didn't matter. It didn't take long for both families to notice. Arya's parents adored him. Her father called Damon the first man I trust with my daughter's future. Her mother said he reminded her of those black and white movie husbands who didn't say much but always protected what was theirs. When Damon proposed, low-key, candlelit, no crowd, Arya didn't hesitate. They moved in together a month later, married 2 months after that. Everything moved fast, but it felt right. In the first year, they laughed a lot. They built IKEA furniture on the floor of their small apartment, bickering over instructions. They hosted quiet dinners. Damon would sit on the kitchen counter while Arya cooked, telling her about blueprints and permits. She'd tell him about newborns, giggles, and messy hospital rooms. They fell asleep on the couch often, her head on his chest, his fingers tangled in her curls. It wasn't passion-fueled madness. It was peace. Simple, soft, steady, until it wasn't. It started with delays, late meetings, long calls, trips that popped up without warning. Damon's firm had landed a contract with a tech billionaire to design a headquarters in New York. The job was high pressure, high profile. He warned her. He said it would be intense. She said she'd wait. And she did. But it never ended. Weeks turned to months. He stopped coming home for dinner. He started closing his laptop when she entered the room. They argued. Not often. But when they did, it felt like he wasn't fighting for her, just defending himself. "You don't understand my world," he once said. She had no words for that. Because she thought they were supposed to be one world. Still, she stayed. She told herself it was a phase. Every marriage has dry spells. Every couple hits seasons of distance. She started reading articles on how to reconnect with a partner. She tried surprising him at the office. He said it wasn't a good day. She started packing his lunch again. He stopped taking them. Once, she sent him a photo of herself in a dress he liked. Nothing suggestive, just soft, sweet. He replied with a thumbs up. That night, he didn't come home. Arya cried in the bathroom quietly, so their neighbors wouldn't hear. Around this time, Leo announced his engagement. Arya was thrilled. Tessa seemed like a dream match, bold, funny, adventurous. She brought light into every room, and Leo, who had always chased joy, seemed genuinely grounded for the first time. When Tessa asked Arya to help with the wedding, she agreed instantly. It gave her something to focus on. A reason to stay busy. Something that wasn't Damon. They spent weekends together, picking dresses, testing cakes, going over flower options. Tessa once said, "You'd make an amazing planner." Arya laughed. Maybe in another life. Tessa smiled. "You're good at making things feel safe." Arya tucked that compliment away. She needed it. But even then, cracks were forming. Damon didn't like how much time she spent on wedding prep. He never said it outright, but his sighs when she got off the phone with Tessa were louder than words. Once, she caught him scrolling through Tessa's Instagram. She didn't say anything. She wanted to believe it meant nothing, but her stomach told her otherwise. In the months leading up to the wedding, Arya buried herself in the details. Every flower arrangement, every playlist revision, every call Tessa couldn't take, Arya handled. She became the quiet engine behind the celebration, keeping things moving when tensions flared or things fell out of place. It helped her forget the silence growing in her own marriage. When Tessa claimed she was running late because of bridal stress, Arya believed her. When she asked Arya to cover shifts at the hospital so she could surprise Leo, Arya agreed. When she said she needed Damon's help picking a modern venue layout, because his style is sharp, Arya smiled and even encouraged it. She never imagined she was helping them build a lie. Damon's behavior shifted during this time, but subtly. He started complimenting Tessa more. At first, it was harmless. She's got great taste. She's bold. Leo's lucky. She's easy to talk to. Arya would nod along, brushing off the sting. It wasn't unusual for in-laws to bond. That's what she told herself. But then he started lingering when Tessa was around, laughing more, straightening his posture when she entered a room, offering to drive her places when Leo couldn't. Once, Arya walked in on them sharing wine in the kitchen late after dinner. Nothing overt, nothing obvious, but something unspoken hung in the air when they turned to see her. Tessa's laugh stopped mid-sentence. Damon cleared his throat. "You okay?" Arya asked softly. Tessa stood quickly. "Yeah, just talking about music. You know how your husband's obsessed with jazz." Arya smiled politely, but something inside her shifted that night. She didn't confront it. She tucked it away, because if she said it out loud, she'd have to admit something was wrong, and she wasn't ready for that. One evening, a week before the wedding, Tessa stopped by the apartment alone. Arya was surprised, but welcomed her in. "I just needed a breather from the madness," Tessa said, slipping off her heels. "Leo's family is wonderful, but it's a lot." They sat on the balcony. The city buzzed below. Tessa looked over the edge. "You ever feel like you're supposed to be grateful for everything, but you're still suffocating?" Arya glanced at her. "Sometimes." Tessa nodded slowly. "You're lucky, you know. Damon really sees you." Arya didn't answer. Because Damon hadn't seen her in months, Tessa sipped from her glass. "You ever wonder what your life would look like if you picked differently?" Arya turned to her sharply. Tessa smiled. "Sorry, deep question. I've been overthinking everything." Arya forced a laugh, but her chest tightened. After that night, Arya started noticing more. The way Damon's phone was always face down. The way Tessa avoided eye contact when Damon was in the room. The way both of them got quiet whenever she entered. But every time she thought about confronting it, she stopped herself. Because what would she say? That her husband might be flirting with her brother's bride? It sounded absurd, insulting, ridiculous even to her. So she said nothing. She put her energy into wedding spreadsheets, timelines, and checklists. She went dress shopping with Tessa. She held her hand through cake tastings. She kept showing up. Because love is what Arya did best, even when it wasn't returned. One afternoon, a few days before the wedding, Arya and Damon were stuck in traffic. The silence was heavy. He scrolled through his phone. She stared out the window. Then she asked, softly, "Do you still see me?" He looked confused. "What do you mean? When you look at me, do you still see the woman you married, or am I just convenient now?" Damon stayed quiet for a second too long. Then he said, "You're tired. This wedding has drained you." She nodded slowly, turning her face back to the window. He never answered her question. The day before the wedding, Leo stopped by Arya's apartment. He brought her flowers, her favorite white tulips, and a bottle of wine. "For the best sister in the world," he grinned. "Couldn't have pulled this off without you." She smiled and hugged him tightly. "You deserve to be happy." Leo pulled back. "You okay? You look pale." "Just nerves," she lied. "I want everything to go smoothly." He looked at her with concern but let it go. Before he left, he paused at the door. "Tessa's lucky," he said. "She's marrying into this family. You're what holds it together." Arya held the smile until the door closed. Then she sat in the dark. alone, holding the wine in one hand and the truth she didn't want to face in the other. That night, she couldn't sleep. She walked through the apartment, running her fingers over picture frames, bookshelves, their wedding photo. They looked perfect, but the longer she stared, the less real it felt. She stood in the kitchen, sipping cold water, trying to quiet the voice in her head. Something isn't right. She went to Damon's office. The door was unlocked. His laptop sat open on the desk. She hesitated, then stepped closer. The screen had a file open, a floor plan of a luxury hotel downtown. Attached to it, an invoice. 3 overnight stays, under Damon's name. All booked the same weekends Tessa had claimed she was working overtime. Aria's hand shook. She closed the laptop slowly. She didn't cry. She just stood there, because the truth wasn't just knocking anymore. It was already inside the house. Have you ever sensed something was wrong, but chose silence because the truth would hurt too much? Tell us in the comments if you've ever ignored your instincts for the sake of peace. Your story might help someone who needs courage today. And if this chapter hit you deeply, give the video a like and share it with someone who values loyalty. The morning of the wedding arrived with golden light breaking through the trees and music humming from the open garden. But for Aria, the warmth didn't reach her chest. She stood in front of the guest bathroom mirror, hands pressed to the marble counter, breathing slowly. Her face was composed. But inside, she was unraveling. She had barely slept. The discovery of those hotel invoices still played in her mind, like a warning bell she couldn't shut off. But she said nothing. She showed up anyway, because this wasn't her day. It was Leo's, and she couldn't let it fall apart because of her pain. Downstairs, the wedding crew bustled around. The estate grounds were decorated beautifully. Soft ivory roses, silk runners, gold-edged place cards. Guests were already arriving in waves, laughing and hugging, posing for pictures in front of the arch. Aria walked through it all like a ghost, smiling when spoken to, nodding when asked questions. Inside, she was scanning every space, looking for Damon, looking for Tessa. She hadn't seen either of them since last night. Damon had left a note saying he was heading to the venue early to help the photographer. Tessa had texted Leo that she'd be getting ready with her stylist and bridesmaids. Everything was going according to plan. On the surface, she found Leo first. He was standing by the fountain with 2 of his groomsmen, cracking jokes, glass of champagne in hand. He looked happy, radiant, like a man seconds away from the life he wanted. When he saw Aria, he grinned and pulled her into a tight hug. "Look at all this," he whispered. "Can you believe it?" She smiled weakly. "You deserve all of it." He held her at arm's length. "Are you okay?" Aria hesitated. "I'm tired. You know how weddings are." Leo tilted his head, but didn't push. "Take a breath. Today's going to be beautiful." She nodded. But something about those words made her stomach churn. Upstairs, Tessa was in her bridal suite. Aria walked in and found her standing in front of the full-length mirror, veil draped over her hair, lipstick half done. The other women stepped out to give them a moment. "You look stunning," Aria said, voice low. Tessa turned. Her hands were fidgeting. "Thanks." Aria stepped closer, fixed the veil, smoothed a wrinkle near the waistline. Tessa stared at her reflection, then whispered, "You've always been so kind to me." Aria paused. She recognized those words, the same ones Tessa had said days ago. This time, they weren't casual. They were laced with something deeper, regret. "I don't deserve it," Tessa added. Aria's chest tightened. "You're marrying my brother," she said softly. "Of course you do." Tessa blinked fast, like she was holding back something. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, too quickly, then locked it and turned away. "I need a minute," she said. Aria watched her step out of the room. And for the first time all morning, something inside Aria screamed. She didn't think. She just followed. Out the hallway, around the corner, toward the guest wing. Each step louder in her ears. The corridor curved sharply, away from the noise of the celebration. Then she heard voices, low and familiar. Damon's, Tessa's. She stopped outside a half-closed door. The sound of quiet laughter, then a pause, then a whisper. She pushed the door open gently. There they were. Tessa stood close to Damon, veil pushed back, lipstick slightly smeared. His hand was on her waist. Their faces were inches apart, frozen in a moment they thought no one would see. Until Arya did. She didn't move, not at first. The air left her lungs, but her feet stayed still. When Damon finally turned and saw her, his entire face collapsed. Tessa's mouth fell open. She stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. Arya didn't speak. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She stepped back, slowly, closed the door without a sound, and walked away. The hallway felt longer now, the walls heavier. She walked straight outside, straight past the photographers, the chatter, the laughter. Her heels sank slightly into the grass as she crossed the lawn. She saw Leo laughing by the altar, rehearsing his vows one last time. He looked up and smiled at her. That smile almost broke her, because she knew what was coming, and he didn't. Arya stood in the front row as the guests gathered behind her. Everything around her felt unreal, like she was watching someone else's wedding through a glass window. People smiled. Cameras clicked. The scent of roses filled the air, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She folded them tightly in her lap to hide it. To her left, her mother was dabbing at the corners of her eyes, touched by the beauty of the moment. Her father beamed, proud of his only son. Beside them, Damon sat, silent, stiff, composed. Arya didn't look at him, not once. She stared straight ahead, at the arch, at her brother, at the altar that was about to become something else entirely. The music shifted. The pianist began the bridal march. Everyone turned, and there she was, Tessa, the same woman Arya had seen in that room not even an hour ago. Her veil pinned neatly, lipstick retouched, smile practiced. She walked like nothing had happened, like her heart wasn't guilty, like her soul wasn't a mess of lies. Leo's eyes lit up. He didn't see the tremble in her hands. But Arya did. She noticed everything now. The fake composure, the downward glances, the way Tessa's lips twitched when she made eye contact with Arya and quickly looked away. Arya's heart was a silent drumbeat of rage and grief. She gripped the hem of her dress under the seat, anchoring herself to the only thing that felt real. She thought about standing up, about stopping it all. But Leo's face, his joy, his excitement, held her still. If she destroyed it, it couldn't be undone. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't her moment to speak. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke words of love, of commitment, of future. Tessa's eyes flicked toward Damon once, barely a second. Damon didn't return it. He stared blankly ahead, jaw tight. Arya could feel the heat radiating from her own body. A war between numbness and fury. Then Leo began his vows. He looked at Tessa like she was the air he'd waited his whole life to breathe. "Tessa," he said, his voice low and full, "from the moment I met you, I knew you weren't like anyone else. You made me better. You made me dream. I didn't think I'd ever settle down, until you made stillness feel safe." Arya flinched, because she remembered when Damon used to say things like that to her. Leo continued, "I promise to protect your heart, to never lie, to never betray, because love, real love, demands truth." Tessa's hands shook slightly. The guests sighed, some wiping their eyes. Then came her turn. She opened her mouth, but the words caught. She cleared her throat, smiled weakly. "Leo, I promise to stand by you, to love you, to grow with you." Arya could hear the strain in her voice, the tremor beneath the surface, but no one else noticed. No one else saw through the act. The officiant raised the ceremonial question. "If anyone here knows of any reason these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." Silence, thick, heavy, endless. Arya's chest tightened. Her lips parted slightly, but her voice wouldn't come. Then Leo shifted and spoke, Before we go on, he said, tone calm and clear, I'd like to say something. The officiant froze. Tessa turned slowly toward him. Arya's heart stopped. Leo held Tessa's hands, looked her in the eyes. I've always believed in truth, he said, and I wanted today to be perfect. I wanted to walk into marriage with my eyes open. The crowd stirred. Leo reached into his suit pocket. Arya felt it before it happened. She knew what was coming. I wasn't going to say anything today, Leo said, but the truth doesn't wait. Not when you love someone. He pulled out his phone. I got these last night. He tapped the screen. The large projector behind the altar, meant for wedding photos, flickered on. Tessa's body stiffened. Arya didn't move. The first photo filled the screen. Tessa, in Damon's car, late night, too close. Gasps rippled through the guests. Next, another image, a hotel lobby. Damon's hand on Tessa's back, her eyes on him. Then an elevator. Damon leaning in, kissing her neck, her arms around him. The images spoke louder than any vow. The audience erupted. Shocked voices, whispers, eyes darting between Damon and Tessa. Tessa stumbled back. Her bouquet hit the floor. Damon stood up from the front row, visibly shaken. Leo turned to the guests. I trusted her, he said. And I loved her. His voice didn't crack. He didn't cry. I waited for her to come clean. I gave her that chance. She didn't take it. Tessa's mouth opened, but no words came out. Leo looked at Arya. And in that moment, without needing to say anything, he knew. He knew his sister had found out, and had protected him the only way she could. I'm sorry, sis, he said, voice softer now. You shouldn't have had to carry this alone. Arya's eyes filled, but she nodded, because now she didn't have to carry it anymore. The garden was silent, not the peaceful kind, not the warm, reverent kind. It was the kind of silence that followed ruin. Tessa stood frozen, surrounded by stunned eyes and scattered petals. Her bouquet lay forgotten in the grass. Her veil shifted in the breeze, but she didn't move. She couldn't. Damon was standing now, a few rows back, hands clenched at his sides, jaw locked. No one spoke. Even the birds stopped singing. Leo stepped away from the altar, phone still in hand, but his voice had gone still. He didn't look angry anymore. Just done. I had 1,000 ways I imagined today, he said slowly, facing the crowd now. But this wasn't one of them. His words weren't loud, but they hit like stone. I didn't expect perfection. I just expected honesty. I thought we were building something real. I thought. He looked at Tessa again. I thought you loved me. Tessa shook her head slowly, her lips trembling. I do, Leo. I do. Leo's laugh was sharp, dry, almost bitter. You did, he repeated. When? Before or after the elevator? Before or after you kissed my sister's husband? Before or after you made me look like a fool in front of every person who matters to me? I was confused. She tried. No, you weren't, he said. You were deliberate. He turned toward Damon. And you, he added coldly. You were family. Damon didn't respond. His face was pale, but he held his ground. Arya didn't need to hear him speak. She already knew the kind of silence men like him chose when there was nothing left to hide behind. Leo looked around at the guests. I'm not marrying her, he said. There's no wedding here today. The officiant stepped back quietly, unsure what to do. The bridesmaids exchanged panicked glances. One picked up the fallen bouquet and clutched it like a shield. Tessa took a shaky step forward. Leo, please, can we talk somewhere else? Leo shook his head. You talked behind my back for weeks, months. I think I've heard enough. Her voice cracked. I made a mistake. He narrowed his eyes. No. You chose a path. A mistake is one night, one slip. What you did was a decision. Every day you didn't tell me was another one. She looked at the projector screen still glowing behind them, then at Arya. Tessa's face broke. I never meant for you to find out like this. But Arya didn't flinch. She stared back, expression blank. She'd already bled. There was nothing left to give. Leo took a deep breath and looked at his guests one last time. If anyone wants to stay for the food, be my guest, but the ceremony is over. Then he walked off the altar. No drama, no big exit, just quiet devastation. The guests slowly began to move, murmuring and whispering, unsure whether to sit or leave or offer condolences. Some of Leo's friends followed him, unsure what to say. Tessa stood alone now. She looked smaller, unsteady. Her father approached, whispering something no one else could hear. She nodded once and walked away, arms hugging herself like the cold had finally reached her skin. Damon was the last to move. He glanced at Arya once, but she didn't return it. He picked up his suit jacket, brushed imaginary lint from the sleeve, and followed the crowd out, without saying a word. Later that evening, the estate was nearly empty. The tables had been cleared. The music had long stopped. All that remained were wilting roses and empty glasses, scattered like remnants of a celebration that never came. Arya sat on a bench beneath the garden lights. Her dress wrinkled now, hair coming loose from the careful updo. She hadn't cried. Not yet. She hadn't said a word since the ceremony. The silence wasn't numbness. It was survival. Then footsteps approached. She didn't look up until she heard his voice. "You okay?" Leo. His tie was gone. His sleeves were rolled. He looked exhausted, but calm. Arya moved over, giving him space. He sat beside her, elbows on his knees. "I should have known," he said quietly. Something felt off for weeks. Arya stared ahead. "I found them this morning." Leo turned toward her. "In the guest room. I walked in looking for Damon. I didn't mean to. I just—" He nodded. "You don't have to explain." "I almost told you," she whispered. "But then I saw your face, the way you smiled. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the one to ruin your day." Leo looked at the grass, pulling at a loose thread on his cuff. "You didn't ruin anything," he said. "They did." Arya swallowed hard. "You ended it with so much control. I don't know how you didn't fall apart." He glanced over. "Because you were watching." She met his eyes. "And because if I didn't end it, I'd still be living a lie tomorrow." They sat there in silence. Two hearts freshly bruised, but beating still. Arya leaned back against the bench, staring up at the darkening sky. The garden lights glowed above them, soft and warm, casting golden halos over the remains of the day. "I kept wondering," she said, her voice quiet, "when exactly it stopped being real. When Damon stopped seeing me. When he started seeing her." Leo rubbed his palms together slowly, staring at the ground. "You don't think it just happened suddenly?" "No," she answered. "Cheating is never sudden. It's planned, it's repeated, it's protected with lies." He exhaled. "I don't even know how to process all of this." "You don't have to process it tonight," she replied. "Tonight, you breathe. That's enough." Leo looked over at her. "You always say the right thing." "No. I just say the thing I wish someone had said to me." That made him smile, just a little. Across the yard, a few remaining guests gathered their things. Arya's mother was speaking quietly to her father near the back entrance, both of them shaken but holding it together. Damon was long gone. So was Tessa. It was like they had vanished into the very silence they created. Arya sat still, legs crossed, hands folded on her lap. "I filed already," she said after a long pause. Leo's head turned. "What?" "The divorce papers. I signed them last week. I didn't tell anyone yet. Not even him." Leo blinked slowly. "Why?" "Because I knew he wouldn't stop," she said. "Even if I had no proof, even if I never caught him in the act, I knew he had already left me. In pieces. In lies." She looked down at her hands. "You know what hurts more than betrayal?" Leo shook his head. "Realizing you loved someone who never truly saw you at all." The garden wind picked up softly, rustling the leaves above them. Somewhere in the distance, a door closed with a soft thud. The staff was packing up. The celebration was officially over, but this moment between them, this quiet, felt like the only real part of the day. "You deserved better," Leo said. "So did you," she replied. They sat in that truth, no self-pity, just recognition, and respect for the pain they both carried now. An hour later, Leo walked her to her car. "I'm going to take a break from everything for a while," he said. "Maybe travel, clear my head." "You should," Arya said. He looked at her. "What about you?" "I'm going back to work tomorrow." Leo smiled lightly. "Of course you are. I still have a life to live," she said. "And now, I'll be living it honestly, even if it's alone." "You won't be alone forever," he said. She gave him a sad smile. "I'm not even thinking about forever anymore. Just tomorrow." They hugged, tight, longer than usual. When they pulled apart, Leo touched her shoulder gently. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not ruining the wedding, and somehow still saving me." Arya drove home that night in silence. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She opened the windows, let the air rush over her face. She didn't listen to music. She didn't need distractions. Her pain was real, but it wasn't breaking her. It was clarifying her. She walked into her apartment and saw the frames on the wall, the wine glasses on the counter, the shoes Damon left by the door. It all looked like it belonged to another life, a script she no longer recognized. She took off her dress, folded it neatly, placed it into a donation bag, and set it aside. Then she opened her laptop, pulled up the documents she had prepared, and clicked submit. The divorce was now official, not because she had caught him, but because she finally chose herself. The sunlight was soft that morning, gentle, quiet. Arya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, tying her hair back the way she always did before work. Clean, simple, secure. The same way she used to do it, even when Damon was still sleeping in the next room. But now, the silence in the apartment meant something different. It meant peace, not loneliness. Just space. Just air. Just her. She packed her lunch, grabbed her hospital badge, and stepped out. No note left behind, no call to explain where she was going, no need to check if someone else's schedule clashed with hers. Her life was no longer shared, and for the first time, she was starting to like that. At the hospital, nothing had changed. The nurses bustled through the halls, the overhead speakers beeped every few minutes, and children's laughter bounced off the walls like soft percussion. It was chaotic as usual, but it grounded her. Here, she wasn't the woman from the ruined wedding. She wasn't Damon's wife. She wasn't Tessa's discarded friend. She was Nurse Arya, sharp, kind, always steady under pressure. Her co-workers welcomed her back with small smiles, a few long hugs, and no questions. They had seen enough in her eyes the last few weeks to know what not to ask, and she was grateful for that. That afternoon, she stood at the nurse's station filling out a chart when Dr. Lee approached her. "You look well," he said, eyeing her quietly. "I feel clean," she answered. He nodded, scribbling something on his clipboard. "That's a good word." They didn't say much more. They didn't need to. In the pediatric ward, there wasn't much time to dwell on personal grief. The children came first, always. And Arya liked that. Every hug from a scared child, every thank you from a relieved parent, every quiet moment spent adjusting a blanket or cooling a fevered forehead reminded her of who she really was. She wasn't just a woman whose marriage failed. She was a healer. She was still whole. Days passed. Then a week. Then 2, and with each passing morning, Arya felt her footing grow stronger. She rearranged her apartment, moved the couch away from the window, painted the bedroom wall a soft sage green, donated clothes she hadn't worn in a year. She bought herself new bedsheets, new pillows. She changed her locks. She lit candles again. And every night, she journaled. Not about Damon, not about betrayal, about herself. About what she was learning, about what she still wanted from life, even if it no longer came with a hand to hold. Then one afternoon, an envelope arrived. No return address, just her name, neatly printed. She opened it on the kitchen counter. Inside, a letter, folded twice, handwritten. It was from Damon. Arya, I've stared at this blank page for days, not knowing what I could possibly say that wouldn't sound hollow. Maybe everything I say now is too late. Maybe I lost the right to speak the moment I crossed that line. But I still wanted to try. You didn't deserve what I did. You were always patient with me, always steady. I was the one who drifted, who took your silence for weakness, who mistook your grace for passivity. But you were the strongest person I've ever known. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to answer this, or ever speak to me again, but I wanted you to know, I'm sorry, and I wish I had been a better man for you. D. She folded the letter slowly and set it down. Then, without hesitation, she slid it into the trash, not out of spite, but because she didn't need his guilt to validate her worth. He was right about one thing, though. She was strong. Stronger than he ever gave her credit for. Later that evening, she sat on the balcony with a cup of tea, her feet tucked under her. The city moved around her, horns honking, dogs barking, laughter from the street below. And for once, she didn't feel like she was missing anything. She didn't wonder where Damon was. She didn't wonder if Tessa had vanished, or if she'd try to come back into Leo's life. She just breathed. That weekend, she visited her parents. Her mother hugged her a little longer than usual. Her father made her favorite rice dish without asking. Over dinner, they talked about childhood memories, about Leo, who had flown out to Spain for a while to clear his head, about upcoming holidays. They didn't bring up Damon, not because they were afraid, but because they respected that Arya wasn't holding on to him anymore. When she returned home, there was another letter. This one wasn't handwritten. It was legal. Finalized. Divorce granted. Signed. Sealed. Done. She stared at it for a moment, then set it down next to a framed photo of herself at graduation. She smiled, not because she was free of a man, but because she had finally chosen herself. Monday morning came with a quiet hum in Arya's apartment. She had stopped waking up with panic, stopped scanning for Damon's presence in her dreams. Her mornings were hers again. Simple, steady, slow. She made oatmeal with cinnamon, opened her window, let the Boston breeze carry in the sounds of the street. It had been 3 weeks since the wedding, 2 since the divorce was finalized, and in that time, Arya hadn't seen or heard from Damon again. She preferred it that way. At the hospital, the day moved fast. A toddler with a sprained wrist, a baby with a stubborn fever, a nervous new nurse shadowing her through every step. By lunch, Arya was sitting under the maple tree in the staff courtyard, picking at her salad when the nurse beside her asked something unexpectedly gentle. "Do you always stay so calm?" Arya looked up. Even when parents are yelling, even when the kids are scared, you never raise your voice. She thought for a moment. "I used to think it was just my nature," Arya said, "but lately, I think it's survival. I stay calm because I remember how it feels when the world around you explodes." The younger nurse nodded slowly. "You're strong." "I had to be," Arya said, "even when I didn't want to be." That evening, Arya stayed late to help with a last-minute discharge. By the time she left, the sky was already dimming. She stopped at the bookstore near her apartment, picked up a novel she'd been meaning to read, then crossed the street to her favorite cafe for tea. She hadn't been there since everything fell apart, but the barista remembered her. "Welcome back," he said, smiling. "You want the usual?" She nodded, surprised by how good that felt. Like some parts of her old life hadn't been stolen, just waiting for her to return. As she turned to find a seat, her eyes met someone else's. A man by the window, alone, reading a paperback, clean cut, collared shirt, sleeves rolled, simple watch, no phone in sight. He looked up. They exchanged that half-second glance that people share when they've accidentally locked eyes in public. Then, he smiled. Arya smiled back, briefly, then turned away. But something in her lingered a little longer than expected. She sat at a table near the counter and sipped her tea slowly, eyes drifting to the window. Minutes passed. Then she heard footsteps. "Sorry to bother you," the man said gently. "But are you reading anything good?" Arya looked up. He wasn't pushy. He wasn't overconfident. He just looked kind. She tilted her head. "Just bought a new one." "Haven't started yet. Mind if I recommend something better?" he asked with a light laugh. She nodded toward the empty chair across from her. "Go ahead." He sat. "Evan," he said, offering a handshake. "Arya." They talked for 20 minutes. About books, about the cafe's playlist, about how the city felt heavier on rainy days. She didn't tell him about the wedding, or Damon, or Tessa. She didn't need to, and he didn't ask. He just listened, really listened. And when she checked the time, she realized an hour had passed. "I should go," she said, standing. He stood too. "Same. But hey, I'm here often. If you ever want another book recommendation." She smiled. "I might." They parted with no promises, no exchanged numbers. But her walk home felt lighter, not because a new man had entered her life, but because she had finally made room. That night, she pulled out her journal. She wrote about the wedding, about her silence in the front row, about the rage she swallowed and the peace she chose instead. Then, at the bottom of the page, she wrote one sentence: "Some storms don't come to destroy, only to clear space for the truth." The next day, a nurse at work asked if she wanted to join them for a weekend hike. She said yes. The following weekend, her mom called and offered to help redecorate her living room. She agreed. 2 days later, she went back to the cafe. Evan was there. This time, he didn't hesitate. "Still reading the same book?" "Nope," she smiled. "Finished it. Ready for a new one." "Mind if I join you?" She gestured to the seat, and they began again, slowly, softly, without expectations. She didn't rush, not into anything, not even healing. She let time move the way it needed to. Some days still hurt, some nights still brought memories, but she didn't flinch anymore. She didn't hide. She didn't replay the betrayal on a loop, because what mattered most now wasn't the lies that broke her. It was the truth that followed. She could survive anything, and still choose peace. A soft knock echoed on Arya's door one quiet Sunday morning. She had just finished folding laundry and was sipping chamomile tea in a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, one she used to wear when Damon traveled. It didn't smell like him anymore. It smelled like peace. She set the mug down and walked to the door. When she opened it, her mother stood there. "Hi," her mom said gently. Arya blinked. "Mom? Is everything okay?" "I was in the neighborhood," she said, lifting a small brown bag. "Brought your favorite coconut bread from Sora's." Arya stepped aside, letting her in. "You were not just in the neighborhood." Her mom smiled and shrugged. "Okay. I missed you." They sat on the couch. Arya broke the bread in half and passed one piece to her. Neither spoke for a long time. The quiet between them had always been safe. Then her mother finally said it. "I read the article." Arya closed her eyes briefly. A local blog had written about the wedding that didn't happen. Photos, rumors, a blurry shot of Damon exiting the venue. The story caught traction. Of course it did. She sighed. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know. Now everyone knows." Her mom touched her arm. "Let them." "I didn't want to be a headline," Arya whispered. "I just wanted to be a wife." Her mother's eyes softened. "No, sweetheart. You wanted to be loved." "There's nothing wrong with that." Arya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "You have nothing to be ashamed of," her mother added. "You left with your head high. You never threw mud. That takes more strength than most people can understand." Arya wiped a tear away quickly. "It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like cleanup." "It's both," her mom said. "Strength is what lets you stand while you sweep." Later that day, Arya opened the journal she had nearly filled. She flipped back to the first page. Her handwriting was more tense then, slanted, sharp. She read the first entry aloud. Today, I chose silence. Not because I didn't know the truth, but because I loved someone more than I loved being right. She touched the words gently. That day felt like another lifetime now. She turned to a fresh page and began to write. You don't heal by pretending nothing hurt. You heal by letting it hurt, and still choosing peace. Over the following days, Aria found herself slowing down in new ways. She stopped multitasking through meals, stopped rushing through conversations, stopped hiding her phone screen like someone might be watching her. The world around her hadn't changed, but her pace had, and in that space, she started seeing more clearly. One afternoon, she ran into an old friend from college, Tasha, at a bookstore downtown. Tasha nearly dropped her coffee when she saw her. Aria. They hugged. I've been meaning to call you, Tasha said. After everything. But I didn't want to be one of those people who only shows up when there's drama. I get it, Aria said. Really? Tasha looked at her for a moment. You look good. I feel better than I thought I would, Aria admitted. They walked around the bookstore together, chatting softly. Then Tasha said something that stopped her. You know what I realized? She said. You never looked at peace when you were with him. Aria froze. Tasha kept going. I don't mean you looked unhappy. You smiled, sure, but your eyes were always watching, like you were waiting for something to go wrong. Aria's heart clenched. You don't look like that now, Tasha finished. Aria didn't reply, but those words followed her home. That night, Aria lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Tasha was right. She had spent most of her marriage hoping, not living. Hoping Damon would come home earlier. Hoping he'd ask how her day was. Hoping he'd hold her like he used to. Hoping she wouldn't catch another lie. She mistook hoping for healing. But now, she wasn't hoping for anything. She was simply being. Later that week, a nurse at the hospital, Jade, was going through her own heartbreak. Aria found her crying in the locker room. Without asking questions, she sat beside her, handing her tissues. After a moment, Jade said, He said I was too much. Aria's jaw clenched. Too much what? Too emotional, too soft, too complicated. Aria took a deep breath. Then he never deserved your softness in the first place. Jade looked up. How do you know? Because I believed a man once who said I was too quiet, too gentle, too slow. And I changed for him, until I realized my quiet was strength, my gentleness was grace, and my pace was peace. Jade wiped her eyes. You don't need to shrink, Aria said. You need someone who meets you at your full size. Jade smiled weakly. Thank you. Anytime. Aria walked back to her station, heart full, not because she fixed anything for someone else, but because she had finally grown into her own truth. This, right here, was who she was. Not a wife. Not a victim. Not a side story to someone else's chaos, but a woman who stayed kind, even when it broke her, and chose herself, even when it hurt. Aria walked through the city that Friday evening with no real destination in mind. She had wrapped up her shift early and didn't feel like going home just yet. The sun had dipped behind the skyline, leaving behind that perfect golden hue that made everything look warmer, softer. She turned onto a quieter street, past small shops and coffee windows. Then, on instinct, she crossed to the corner cafe. She hadn't planned to see him again. But Evan was there. Same seat, same paperback, same relaxed presence that somehow didn't ask for attention but quietly drew it in. He looked up, surprised, but not startled. Twice in 1 week, he said with a smile. Aria walked closer. Is this your permanent spot, or should I be worried you're stalking me? He laughed. Let's say it's fate and see where it goes. She tilted her head. What are you reading? Something boring, he said. Want to save me from it? She looked around. Only if the chair's still open. He gestured to it. Reserved for people with good taste in tea. She sat. They didn't talk about personal things right away. No deep dives. No past relationships. No wounds. Just music, movies, which food trucks had the best grilled cheese. The kinds of things that remind you being around someone doesn't always have to be hard or heavy. It could be light, quiet, easy. Arya liked that. Evan was never in a rush to impress her, never filled silences with noise. He let them sit there in the spaces between questions without pressure. That, more than anything, made her feel safe. "So, what do you do?" she asked. "Marketing analyst. But don't hold that against me." "Why would I?" "Because I use spreadsheets more than words." Arya smiled. "Words aren't everything." He looked at her. "You say that like someone who's heard too many that didn't mean anything." She met his gaze. Calm. Clear. "Maybe." He nodded. "Well, you'll only hear the ones I mean." That night, Arya didn't cry. She didn't spiral in memories. She walked home feeling something different. Not excitement, not fear, just stillness, the good kind. Over the next week, they crossed paths again. At the bookstore, at the cafe, then eventually, on purpose, dinner at a low-key bistro. No dress code, no pressure, just good food and warm conversation. When Evan walked her home, he didn't lean in for a kiss. He didn't test boundaries. He simply said, "Can I see you again?" Arya nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." And for the first time in a long time, she meant it. Back at home, she sat with her journal and wrote, "It's not always about replacing what broke you. Sometimes it's about meeting someone who lets you rest in your own pieces and still see beauty." One afternoon, she checked her email and saw a name she hadn't expected. Tessa. Just a name. No subject line. She hovered for a moment, then opened it. "Arya, I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe to clear my conscience. Maybe to ask for something I don't deserve. I'm sorry. I won't defend what I did. I won't explain it. I won't beg you to understand. But I want you to know, it wasn't about you. It was never about you. You were the best friend I didn't deserve, and the sister I betrayed, and I hate that I can't undo it. Leo won't speak to me. Damon blocked me, and I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just needed to say it out loud. I'm sorry, Arya. Tessa." Arya closed the email. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. She had nothing left to give to the past. Instead, she changed into comfortable clothes, tied her hair up, and met Evan downstairs. They grabbed 2 coffees and walked aimlessly through the park. He noticed the quiet look on her face but didn't press. "I'm proud of you," he said softly, out of nowhere. She looked at him. "For what?" "For standing." She smiled. "I didn't feel like I stood. I just didn't fall apart." Same thing. They stopped by a bench near the water, sat side by side, watching ducks move across the pond. Evan reached over and gently placed his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. She let it stay. She let herself stay. Have you ever walked away from something that hurt, but found healing in your own stillness? Drop a comment below if you've ever had to rebuild yourself quietly. And if Arya's strength moved you, share this story with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their healing. Sometimes peace doesn't come with applause. It comes with one brave step forward. By late November, the air in Boston had turned crisp. Leaves fell in slow spirals outside Arya's window. Morning light stretched thinner each day, brushing gold across her walls for only a few short hours. But Arya's world was warmer than it had been in months. Not because of someone else, but because she had made space for herself again. She had started going on walks after work, not to escape, but to breathe. She tried a new Sunday ritual, unplugging. No social media, no calls unless it was family, no emails, just quiet. A warm drink, a book, maybe a journal. It gave her room to feel things at her own pace. Some days, the memories came back unexpectedly. An old photo tucked inside a drawer, a song on. The radio that Damon used to play, a scent on the street that reminded her of Tessa's perfume. But instead of freezing, Arya let the thoughts pass through her. They didn't stay long, because they didn't own her anymore. One Monday evening, after helping a young mother calm her newborn in the ER, Arya stepped out to the break room and found a note taped to her locker. "You still calm chaos better than anyone. Jade." She smiled and folded it gently into her bag. It had become a quiet pattern now, people around her beginning to lean on her in ways that had nothing to do with her past, because she was more than what she had endured, and people were starting to see that. That Friday, Leo called. It was the first time she'd heard his voice in over a month. "Spain is quieter than I thought," he said on the other end of the line. Arya leaned against her kitchen counter. "That's probably good for you." "I miss noise, though," he chuckled. "Then come home," she offered. He paused. "You think we're ready for that?" Arya smiled. "I think we're ready for anything, but if you need a few more days of peace, take them." He exhaled. "How are you doing?" "I'm okay." There was a pause, then she added softly, "I've been seeing someone." Leo didn't react with surprise. Just stillness. "Good," he said. "I was hoping you would." "Nothing serious yet," she said. "Just nice." "Does he listen?" Arya smiled. "Yeah. He listens." "Then he's already doing better than Damon ever did." That weekend, Evan took her to a used bookstore near Cambridge. He let her walk through the aisles first. She picked out 3 paperbacks and handed him one. "You should read this," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "You haven't even read it yet." "Exactly. We can talk about it after." He smiled. "Deal." They sat in the back corner by the window. Quiet. Not reading. Not talking much. Just being. And Arya noticed something. The stillness no longer felt like a pause in her life. It felt like the life she wanted. Later that night, Evan walked her home again. This time, he stopped at the steps. "Arya," he said. She turned. "I know we're taking this slow. I want that. I respect that. But I need to say something." She tilted her head. "I see you," he said. "Not just the version of you that smiles in cafes or listens well, but the version of you that's been through fire and still walks tall." Her throat tightened. "I don't want to fix you," he continued. "You don't need fixing. I just want to be someone who walks beside you. If that's something you want too." She looked at him, really looked, and nodded. "I do." When she stepped inside her apartment that night, the air felt softer, lighter. She set her book down, changed into her favorite robe, and opened her journal. When someone respects your scars, instead of trying to hide them, you stop bracing for pain. You start trusting peace again. She underlined that line twice, because she meant it. At work, a small change started happening. People who once saw her as reserved now came to her first when things were hard. Not because she was loud, not because she had all the answers, but because she made the room feel safer. Parents calmed when she entered. Children stopped crying when she picked them up. Staff asked her quietly, "How would you handle this?" even when she wasn't the most senior nurse. And Arya realized something important. Damon had never seen the power in her calm, but the world did now, and she wasn't going to dim it again for anyone. The next morning, Arya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, brushing her curls out gently. There was something different about her reflection lately. Not so much the face, but the eyes. They didn't look tired anymore. They looked clear, unapologetically honest. She had never been loud, never the type to command a room. But now, her presence did. Quietly, confidently, without force. She didn't chase validation anymore. She simply lived in her truth. And that made all the difference. That evening, Evan invited her to a small art show on the South End. He'd heard about it from a friend who knew the photographer. Arya hesitated at first. Crowds weren't really her thing anymore, but something in his voice made her say yes. "I'll drive," he added. "And if it's boring, we'll sneak out for tacos." That made her laugh. Deal. The venue was intimate. White walls, soft music, photographs strung along gallery lines under dim gold lighting. Arya walked slowly through the space, studying the black and white stills, snapshots of city life, of weathered faces, of ordinary people caught in unguarded moments. There was one of a woman standing alone in the rain, no umbrella, just staring forward with water running down her cheeks. It reminded Arya of that wedding day, of the moments afterward, the silence, the wait. She stood in front of the photo for a while. Evan came up beside her. "Powerful, right?" he said. She nodded. "She's not sad. She's enduring." He looked at her. "That's exactly what I thought." They didn't stay long after that. By the time they reached the taco truck Evan promised, the crowd was gone, and the night air had grown colder. They stood under a street lamp, huddled over 2 paper trays, laughing at how messy the salsa was. "Okay, confession," Evan said, wiping his mouth. "I hate modern art." Arya choked on a laugh. "What?" "Yeah, I went for you." She shook her head. "You're ridiculous." "I am," he said. "But worth knowing." She smiled. "That, I agree with." Then, without planning it, without nerves, without performance, he leaned in and kissed her. Just once. Soft. Sure. When he pulled back, she didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her eyes told him everything. The next morning, she called Leo. "I kissed someone last night," she said as soon as he answered. He laughed. "That's how you're opening this conversation? I figured you'd want the headlines first." He smiled through the phone. "Do you like him?" "I think I could," she said honestly. "He's safe, and smart, and slow." "Slow is good," Leo said. "After what we've been through, slow is necessary." "How's Spain?" "Almost too peaceful." She laughed. "So, coming home soon?" "I think I'm ready," he said. And for the first time since the wedding, Arya felt like her family was whole again, even if everything looked different now. That weekend, Arya finally cleaned out her storage boxes. She'd been avoiding it for weeks. There were photos in there, cards, wedding albums, receipts from a life she no longer claimed. She spread everything across the floor. She lit a small candle, and slowly, quietly began sorting. Some things she kept: a photo of her and Leo laughing at a family picnic, a letter from her grandmother tucked into her wedding planning notebook. But most things she let go of. She didn't need to destroy them. She just needed to release them. That was the difference now. Her healing didn't come from anger. It came from clarity. When she told Evan about it over dinner that night, he just nodded. "Letting go isn't loud," he said. "No," she agreed. "Sometimes it's just quiet and sacred, like you," he said. She looked at him, slightly amused. "Are you calling me sacred?" "I'm calling you rare." Later that night, Arya sat on her balcony. No wine, no tea, just air, just herself. She thought about everything: the wedding, the betrayal, the silence she had carried, the scream she had never let out. And she smiled, because even without that scream, she had found her voice. 2 months had passed since Leo called off his wedding, and in that time, Arya hadn't begged for closure. She hadn't stalked old pages. She hadn't checked Damon's whereabouts or tracked down Tessa's next move. What she focused on was herself. She had a full work schedule, a slowly blooming connection with Evan, and most importantly, a mind that no longer replayed the worst parts of her story on a loop. But that didn't mean she was numb. She still remembered. She still healed. She just wasn't lost in it anymore. One cold Wednesday morning, she arrived at the hospital early to prep the pediatric ward. Her scrubs were clean, her hair neatly pulled back, and her focus sharp. But as she checked the patient chart near the nurse's desk, a voice behind her made her turn. "Is this your floor?" She looked up. It was him, Damon. He wore a black wool coat, crisp shirt underneath, but his face had changed. His eyes looked tired, not just from lack of sleep, but from something heavier. She didn't speak. He glanced around. "I waited out front for almost an hour. I didn't want to ambush you. You shouldn't be here," she said calmly. "I know," he said quickly. "I just needed 5 minutes. Not to fix anything, not to ask anything, just to say something." Arya stayed still. The hallway behind them was quiet. The nurse's desk was still empty. He lowered his voice. "You were right to leave." Silence. "I ruined everything." he added. And I lied to myself longer than I lied to you. Arya folded her arms, not out of defense, but to hold herself steady. I know I don't deserve your grace, he said, but I never stopped respecting it. She raised an eyebrow slightly. You respected it so much. You betrayed it. He swallowed. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, he said. I just needed to see you once, to see if you're okay. She looked him in the eyes. I'm okay. He nodded. I hope one day someone sees you the way I should have, she added. Not because you earned it, but because you learned how to protect what matters. He blinked, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, and walked away. She didn't watch him go. She turned back to the chart and resumed her work, because the past didn't need her attention anymore. That night, Arya met Evan for dinner. She didn't tell him about Damon, not because she was hiding it, but because Damon no longer held that kind of space in her life. Instead, she told him about a little girl on her floor who had drawn a picture of Arya in a nurse's cape with the words "She fixes boo-boos and feelings." Evan smiled. She's not wrong. You should have seen her, Arya laughed. She made me look 10 feet tall. Sounds accurate, he said. Then he reached across the table and held her hand, simple, steady, present. Later, when they walked by the bookstore, Evan asked her something unexpected. What was the moment you knew you were done with him? Arya paused. They stood under the glow of the shop window. When I caught him with her. No, she said. That broke something. But it didn't finish it. She looked up at him. It was the day I realized I didn't want to explain my worth anymore. He said nothing, just pulled her gently into his arms, and she let herself be held, not because she needed support, but because she was safe. Back home, she wrote in her journal again, healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just looks like holding eye contact and not looking away. Thanksgiving arrived with a chill in the air and warmth in Arya's apartment. Her parents were flying in later that day. Leo had texted early in the morning from the airport, I'm finally coming home. Save me a seat at the table. She hadn't seen him since Spain, and even though they talked often, hearing his voice wasn't the same as hugging him. She set the dining table slowly, letting her mind wander. This time last year, she had been married. This time last year, she had hosted dinner in a home where love had already started fading, and she didn't even know. And now? Now she had peace. Not perfection, but peace. Around noon, Evan stopped by with a bag of fresh cranberry muffins. Your dad's gonna love me, he said, holding them up like a gift offering. Arya laughed. You're bribing my family already. He shrugged. I like to come prepared. He stepped inside and looked around. You've done a lot with the place. Yeah, she said, glancing at the new curtains, the bookshelf she had finally put. Together, the photo frames, each one now holding a picture that made her smile. He walked over to a framed quote on the console table. Read it out loud. I didn't lose you. I found me. He turned to her. That one says everything. She smiled. It does. Later that day, the apartment filled with laughter. Her parents arrived with roasted vegetables and stories from their flight. Leo came in last, dropping his duffel bag by the door, pulling Arya into a tight hug that neither of them rushed. I missed you, he said, voice muffled against her shoulder. I missed you more, she replied. When he pulled back, he looked her over. You're glowing. You're just jet-lagged. He grinned. No, really. You look right. She nodded. I feel it. They ate together like they hadn't in months. No tension. No lingering sadness. Just warmth. Her father asked Evan a dozen questions, and Arya watched as he answered every one of them with quiet charm. Her mother gave her a subtle thumbs up at one point from across the table. Leo leaned over at dessert. You're going to let this one stick around? Arya smiled. We'll see. After the table was cleared and her parents went out for a walk, Arya and Leo sat in the kitchen, finishing their second round of pie. He tapped his fork against the plate lightly. I've been thinking about writing, he said. Writing what? A book, not a long one, not about Tessa or the wedding, just the things I learned after. Arya leaned back. That could help a lot of people. I want to be honest. About the denial. The anger. The days I wanted to message her just to say something mean. Arya raised a brow. Did you? He shook his head. Didn't need to. The silence said enough. She smiled. Proud of you. Leo looked at her. You know you saved me that day, right? She blinked. If you hadn't looked me in the eye during that ceremony, if you hadn't held it together the way you did, I wouldn't have had the strength to do what I did. She touched his hand gently. And if you hadn't done it, I don't know if I ever would have healed the way I have. They were quiet for a moment. Then Leo stood. You've always been the strong one. No, she said. I just got tired of breaking quietly. That night, after everyone had gone, Evan helped her clear the last of the dishes. You okay? He asked, as she dried the final plate. Yeah, she said. Better than okay. He looked at her. You seem lighter tonight. I feel like I'm finally living forward, not backward. Evan leaned in and kissed her forehead. Keep going, he whispered. You're doing it right. Later, in bed, Arya opened her journal. She didn't write a long entry, just 5 words. I'm not scared of softness anymore. Because she knew now, softness didn't mean weakness. It meant strength without armor, and she had earned every bit of it. Snow fell quietly on the streets of Boston. It wasn't heavy, just enough to dust rooftops, line sidewalks, and give everything that soft white hush that only winter could bring. Arya pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as she crossed the street with 2 cups of coffee in hand. The city felt gentler lately, like she had slowed down just enough to hear it breathe. She reached the hospital steps and paused to look up. The lights glowed inside, warm against the grey sky. She smiled to herself before heading in. Inside, the pediatric ward was already buzzing. The holiday decorations had gone up last week, paper snowflakes taped to windows, little stockings, strung across the nurses' station, and a blinking string of lights around the reception computer. One of the nurses had even set up a mini tree near the playroom. Arya handed 1 coffee to Jade, who gave her a sleepy grin in return. You're a saint, Jade mumbled. Just a nurse with a Starbucks rewards app. They both laughed. Later that morning, Arya was helping a young boy settle in for an 4 when the door creaked open and a familiar voice called out. Excuse me. Nurse Arya. She turned. Leo. She blinked. What are you doing here? Just visiting, he said, holding up a small paper bag. Mom told me you had a long shift. Thought you'd need these. She smiled and followed him to the hallway. He handed her the bag. Inside was her favorite banana nut muffin from the bakery near their childhood home. You drove across the city for this. Leo shrugged. It felt like the right day. They walked toward the break room, Arya unwrapping the muffin as they went. Leo glanced around. You really do run this place. I try. You look good here, he said. Arya nodded. I feel good here. They sat at the small table, and for a moment didn't say anything else. Then Leo leaned forward. I've been thinking about how different everything is now, about how fast it all changed. It didn't feel fast when it was falling apart, Arya said. It felt slow, like erosion. He nodded. Yeah, like something eating away at you before you even notice. Arya tore a piece from the muffin. I used to think life only had one version of happy, one path, one picture. Leo looked at her. And now I know peace doesn't always look like a perfect photo. Sometimes it looks like a quiet apartment, a kind man, a steady breath. Leo smiled. I'm glad you're finding it. That afternoon, after Leo left, Arya returned to her rounds. She checked vitals. She helped a scared toddler through an X-ray. She calmed a worried father pacing near the nurses' station. And somewhere between those small acts of care, she realized something. She didn't feel like someone recovering anymore. She felt like someone who had arrived. That evening, she got home just after 7. Evan was already there, standing in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. I'm making dinner, he called out. Is this a bribe? He turned. A peace offering. For what? I ate the last of your almond cookies yesterday and didn't confess. Arya burst out laughing. Unforgivable, she teased. I know. That's why I'm making penne tonight. She stepped behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. He leaned back into her gently. You're warm, she whispered. You're home, he said back. They ate dinner on the couch, feet tucked beneath blankets, movie playing in the background. Somewhere between the first bite and the last, Arya found herself studying him, not out of suspicion, not out of fear, but out of awe. He was gentle, not just in words but in presence, and he never rushed her, never filled silence with noise, never stepped where he hadn't been invited. After dinner, he cleared the dishes, kissed her on the cheek and said, You okay if I go home early tonight? Of course, she said. He paused. Not because I don't want to stay, but because I want to keep giving you space until you tell me otherwise. Her heart stilled. I'll tell you, she promised. When I'm ready. I know, he said. And then he left, with no pressure, no questions, no tension. Just trust. She stood by the window after he was gone, watching the snow fall against the glass. She hadn't said it aloud yet, not to him, not even to herself, but she was starting to fall for him, not in the old way, not with frantic butterflies or desperate need, but in this new way, a calm, quiet kind of love that felt more like breathing than burning. Later that night, her phone buzzed. A text from Leo. Just wanted to say again, you made it through the storm, and I've never been prouder of the way you kept your dignity intact. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, Some storms are blessings in disguise. They destroy what needed to fall, so we can finally build something real. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in silence and light snow. Arya sat curled on the couch, a blanket draped around her, journal resting on her lap. No makeup, no noise, just soft socks and slower breathing. It was the first weekend in months where she hadn't planned anything. No errands, no dinners, no obligations. She had chosen to rest, and it felt earned. The knock on the door came just before noon. She opened it to find Evan holding a brown paper bag and a sheepish smile. Before you say anything, he said, these are apology cookies. She blinked. Apology for... I couldn't stop thinking about you last night, so I baked. And it turns out baking helps me manage emotions. Arya laughed, stepping aside. You're either very sweet or deeply dangerous. Can't it be both? He followed her into the kitchen. She opened the bag. Almond cookies. Perfectly shaped. She pulled one out, took a bite, and raised her brows. Okay, these are better than mine. Evan looked proud. That's all I needed to hear. She poured them both coffee, and they sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. There were no distractions. No rush. Just two people learning to enjoy presence without performance. After a quiet moment, Evan asked, What would you have done if Leo hadn't stopped that wedding? Arya stared at her cup. I don't know, she said. I think I would have kept the secret. Let it eat me slowly. I was trying to protect him. Even if it meant losing myself. Evan's eyes didn't waver. But you didn't lose yourself, he said. You let the truth come forward. In its time. She nodded. I'm still learning not to carry everyone else's burden. You're not responsible for other people's choices. I know that now. He reached out, took her hand gently. Good. They took a walk through the nearby park that afternoon, snow crunching under their boots. Children threw snowballs in the distance. Couples passed with linked arms and warm smiles. And Arya felt none of the ache she used to feel when watching people in love. Not envy, not emptiness. Because now, she had her own. Not flashy, not perfect, but real. Back at her apartment, they sat on the floor near the window, sharing a blanket, sipping leftover cider. Evan leaned his head against hers. I think you're the calmest person I've ever met. Arya smiled softly. I wasn't always. There was a time I begged for peace and called it love. He looked at her. You don't beg anymore. No, she said. Now I wait. I listen. I protect my space. And your heart? She met his gaze, still cautious, but no longer closed. He didn't kiss her. He didn't need to. The moment already said more than touch ever could. That night, Arya wrote in her journal, but not about Damon, not about Tessa, not about loss or betrayal or disappointment. She wrote about connection. He doesn't rush me, doesn't question my pace. He sits in my silence and doesn't flinch. And I think that's what real love begins like. Quiet, steady, unforced. The next morning, her mom called. They talked about new recipes, a cousin's engagement, and the growing tension between two aunties who hadn't spoken since Easter. Normal, light, easy. At the end, her mom said, "I see something in your voice." Arya paused. "What? You sound like you're finally settled in your spirit." Arya smiled. "I think I am. I don't know if that boy's the one," her mom added. "But I do know this. You're the woman I hoped you'd become." Arya didn't speak for a second, because there are compliments you hold like a treasure. And this was one of them. Sunday evening, Evan sent a text. "There's an open mic at the cafe tonight. Want to meet me? If it's awful, we'll leave halfway, and I'll bake you apology brownies." She replied, "Deal." But this time, oatmeal chocolate chip. He answered with a laughing emoji and a heart. And for the first time in a long time, her heart didn't hesitate to accept it. 1 year later, Boston's spring sun poured through the cafe windows in long golden lines. Arya sat at her usual corner table, sipping her tea, pen in hand, journal open. The place hadn't changed. The menu still listed the same chai latte special. The barista still drew hearts in the foam. The same jazz playlist looped softly in the background. But everything inside Arya had shifted. She didn't come here to escape anymore. She came here to reflect. Across the table, Evan leaned in with a smirk. "You're in your serious writing face mode." She looked up. "It's not that serious. You've been staring at that page for 10 minutes. She shrugged. "I'm thinking about." She tapped her pen against the edge of her cup. "The kind of woman I used to be, and how far she had to crawl to find peace." Evan nodded. "She made it, though." "She did." He took a sip of his coffee. "You think about her often." "I honor her," Arya said. "I don't erase her. I'm here because she didn't give up." They left the cafe and walked down Tremont Street, hand in hand. The city felt different now, familiar but kinder, not because Boston had changed, but because Arya walked through it with a new stride, a grounded one. Back at her apartment, the living room was filled with sunlight and soft shadows. The books on the shelves were no longer reminders of someone else's interests, they were hers. The photos on the wall held only joy, and her plants, once neglected, were thriving. Evan walked over to the kitchen and pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. "What's that?" she asked. He hesitated. "Something I've been meaning to show you." She raised an eyebrow as he handed it over. It was a list. At the top, "Things I've learned from loving you." She read slowly. 1. Silence can be sacred. 2. Healing doesn't have a deadline. 3. Presence means more than promises. 4. Real love never rushes. 5. Your peace is my priority, not my project. Her eyes blurred slightly. He added, "There's more, but I figured I'd start with 5. She looked up at him. "You wrote this?" "I live this," he said. "And I wanted you to know, your softness doesn't scare me, your strength doesn't threaten me, and your story doesn't define you. It just makes me respect you more." She didn't cry, not because it wasn't moving, but because this kind of love didn't bring tears. It brought calm. Later, as they sat by the window, Evan wrapped his arm around her shoulder. "I want to meet Leo again," he said. "You already met him." "Yeah, but back then I was just the guy showing up with muffins. Now I'm still that guy. But with better intentions." Arya laughed. "He'll like you. He already does. He just wants to make sure I'm okay. Are you?" She looked around the room, at the quiet, the light, the stillness in her chest. "I am." That evening, she joined a video call with Leo and their parents. Her mum was in her garden. Her dad was reading the sports section behind her. Leo looked relaxed, even playful. "We should do a family trip," he suggested mid-call. Arya raised an eyebrow. "You hate planning." "I do," he agreed. "That's why I'm saying it, and hoping you do the rest." She rolled her eyes, but her heart warmed. The idea of being surrounded by people who had walked with her through every stage, through heartbreak, healing, and quiet rebuilding, felt right. "I'll think about it," she said. After the call ended, Arya leaned back on the couch and stared at the ceiling. She thought about how much had changed in 12 months. The wedding that never happened, the marriage that ended, the silence that exposed the lies, the strength she never knew she had until she needed it. And then, Evan, a man who hadn't saved her, just stood beside her while she saved herself. She reached for her journal again and wrote, "I'm no longer the woman who stayed quiet in the front row. I'm the one who stood up afterward, walked away with grace, and built something, softer, slower, and stronger than anything I thought I'd have." Outside, the street lamps flickered on. Inside, Arya felt no fear about what tomorrow would bring, because she wasn't surviving anymore. She was living. Spring melted into early summer, and with it came something quiet, strong, and certain: Arya's peace. It didn't look like big milestones. It wasn't fireworks or fanfare. It was morning light on her bedroom wall. It was making coffee without rushing. It was laughing mid-sentence and not apologizing for it. It was not looking over her shoulder when someone loved her gently. She had stopped waiting for closure from people who broke her. She had given it to herself. Evan planned a small weekend getaway, not a proposal, not a surprise, just a calm escape up the coast to a quiet rental near the ocean. "We both earned rest," he said simply, "and I want you to have more of it." Arya had never felt so seen. On the second night of the trip, they sat barefoot on the porch. The sun had dipped low, casting burnt orange across the sea. The only sounds were waves and the occasional seagull. Evan pulled a folded napkin from his pocket and handed it to her with a grin. "I didn't bring paper." She unfolded it. Inside, scribbled in ink, was one simple question. "Are you happy?" She stared at it. Such a small sentence, but it held everything. After a moment, she took the pen he handed her and wrote underneath, "Yes." "And I never thought I'd say that again." He didn't press for more. He just leaned in, rested his forehead against hers and whispered, "Then we're doing this right." Back in Boston, Arya returned to work with new calm in her bones. The hospital was busy, but her patience was endless. Her co-workers noticed. Her supervisor offered her a leadership position, mentoring new nurses on pediatric care. She accepted, not for power, not for recognition, but because she finally knew what she brought into every room: steadiness. And she was proud of it. One evening after work, she opened an email she hadn't expected. It was from a woman she didn't know. The subject line read, "You don't know me, but I needed to thank you." Inside, it said, "I was at that wedding last year. I saw you in the front row. You didn't say a word, but I watched you walk out afterward with your head high. It made me leave a man who was slowly breaking me. I've never told anyone that, but you changed my life, and you never even knew." Arya sat in silence, then closed her laptop slowly. She didn't cry. She smiled, because even her silence that day had spoken loudly. That weekend, Evan met her family for dinner. Her father pulled him aside and said one sentence that meant more than all the rest. "You protect her peace without trying to control it. Don't ever stop." And Evan promised he wouldn't. That night, Arya walked Evan to his car. They stood under the streetlight, arms around each other, as a breeze moved softly through the trees. "You know," she said, "I'm not afraid of falling in love again." He looked at her. "You're already doing it. I just needed to feel safe first." He touched her cheek. "You made yourself safe." "I just showed up with cookies." They both laughed. She leaned in and kissed him. And this time, there was no holding back. When she returned upstairs, she lit a candle, opened the window, and picked up her journal one last time. She turned to a clean page and wrote, "This began with betrayal. It continued in silence, but it ends in peace. Because I found something deeper than revenge or answers. I found me. She set the journal down, turned out the light, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't dream about the past. She simply rested, whole, loved, and free. If this story moved you, if you've ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal, silence, or heartbreak, then let Arya's journey remind you, you don't need noise to prove your worth. You don't need revenge to find your peace. And you never have to stay where you're not truly seen. Drop A in the comments if you've ever walked away from someone who didn't value you. Share this video with someone who needs strength right now. And if you believe real love starts with you, hit the like button, subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, and join us again for another true-to-life story that speaks to the heart. Until next time, protect your peace and never apologize for choosing yourself.